Okay, I want you to picture a boardroom. You know the type. Mahogany table, those really expensive chairs, coffee that probably costs way too much.
Right.
The execs are sitting there and someone says, we need to modernize, we need to reach the younger generation. And then, of course, the checkbook comes out.
I know exactly where this is going.
They drop a fortune on a serious game. Maybe it's some high-end virtual reality safety sim or, some gamified compliance training. It looks amazing.
The graphics are console quality.
Totally. Everyone high fives,
Yeah.
and then the employees actually play it.
And the silence is deafening.
Yeah.
Or worse, the engagement scores come back and they're just abysmal.
Right. And this is the moment I really want to focus on today. Because when that happens, the finger pointing starts immediately, and it usually points in one of two directions. Either the employees are lazy and just didn't engage, or the software was buggy.
The classic binary. It's either the user or the tool. But that is just a massive oversimplification.
How?
If you're only looking at the player in the game, you are missing this entire invisible architecture that actually determines whether learning happens at all.
And that's really the whole premise of today's deep dive. We're unpacking a really dense, fascinating piece of research by Quentin Alvarez.
Right.
He's a professor, but is also the R&D lead at a company called Immersive Factory. So he's a guy who actually builds these games, but also studies why they fail.
And he's tackling this huge blind spot in the industry, evaluation. How do we even know if a game actually worked?
Well, most of the time, we just give people a quiz at the end, right? Multiple choice. Did you like the training? Yes or no?
Alvarez calls that summative evaluation. And his core argument is that for game-based learning, that kind of testing is, well, it's borderline useless.
Useless. That's a strong word. I mean, if I take a history class, I take a test. If I get an A, I know the history. Why can't I just do that with a video game?
Because a history test measures what he calls a stock of knowledge. It's static. You either know the date the Bastille was stormed or you don't. That fact doesn't change depending on whether the room is hot or cold. But a game is an experience. It's a dynamic flow.
So it's non-reproducible.
Precisely. If you play a simulation today and I play it tomorrow, our experiences are completely different. Maybe you're competitive and you rush. Maybe I'm more cautious. Maybe the controller just feels weird in my hand.
Right.
A final score just wipes all of that context away.
Yeah.
It tells you that you failed, but it tells you absolutely nothing about why.
So we need a better diagnostic tool. And Alvarez gives us one. It's an acronym. CEPAJe. C-E-P-A-J-E.
Now, the source material is French, but the framework itself is completely universal.
So what does it stand for?
It stands for context, teacher. That's the E for enseignant in French pedagogy, learner apprenant in Gaumont. CEPAJe.
It sounds a bit like a grid.
It is a grid, a five-dimensional grid. And to make it even more complex, Alvarez says you can't just look at these five things once. You have to look at them across three distinct phases of time.
Okay, walk me through that.
You have the briefing phase,
Right.
Before the game even starts. Then the animation phase, the gameplay itself, and finally, the debriefing, the critical discussion afterwards.
Okay, that sounds thorough, but maybe a bit academic. Let's get our hands dirty.
Good idea.
We have a case study from the source material that applies this CEPAJe model to a real world. Well, maybe disaster is too strong a word. Let's say a troubled training session.
It wasn't a total disaster, no, but it definitely had some critical failures. We're traveling to northern France, November 2022.
All right, set the scene for us.
We're at a chemical plant, and this isn't just any factory. It produces molecules for medicine. It's a very high-stakes environment.
So serious stuff.
Very. In Europe, they call this a CEPAJe site, which basically means it handles dangerous substances. If you mess up here, things can explode.
So safety training isn't just a box to check on a form, it's life or death.
Exactly. It's a mandatory safety day. You've got about 30 employees packed into a room, managers, technicians, factory floor workers, a real mix.
And what's the serious game they bought?
It's a hazard hunting simulation in virtual reality. The idea is pretty simple. You put on the headset, you're transported to a virtual warehouse, and you have to spot risks.
Like a spill on the floor, a box stacked too high, that kind of thing?
Exactly. A loose cable. You use a virtual camera to photograph the risk.
Okay, standard VR training stuff. But here's my logistical question. You have 30 people. You don't have 30 headsets, do you?
No. And this is the first massive constraint that the CEPAJe model immediately flagged. They have one headset.
One headset for 30 people. That seems inefficient.
It's what we call the fishbowl method. One person is it. They put on the headset, effectively blindfolding themselves to the real world.
And the other 29 people just sit and watch their point of view on a big screen.
Yep. Cast onto a big projection screen.
That sounds like a nightmare for the person in the headset. You're performing for all your colleagues, but you can't even see them.
It puts a huge amount of social pressure on the learner, which we'll definitely get to. But running this whole show, you have two facilitators. You have the plant manager, the boss, and an external expert from the game company, Immersive Factory.
Okay, so we have the scene. 30 people, one headset, a chemical plant. Now let's run this through the CEPAJe grid to see what actually went wrong. Let's start with C for context.
Usually when a training session goes bad, companies blame the content. The slides were boring. But CEPAJe forces you to look at the room itself first.
And what did the analysis find? Any issues there?
Oh, significant ones. I mean, on the positive side, the room was soundproofed and the internet was fast. That stuff really matters for VR.
Sure.
But the seating arrangement was a total failure.
Your source mentioned a U-shape.
Right. They set the chairs in a U-shape around the screen. This meant that about a third of the audience had to physically crane their necks sideways for an hour just to watch the gameplay.
It sounds so trivial, doesn't it? Oh, my neck hurts. But if you're physically uncomfortable, you just check out. You stop learning.
Exactly. Physical discomfort is a huge distraction. But the bigger failure in the context dimension, it was mental.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this was a mandatory training day. But the managers hadn't cleared the employees' schedules.
Oh, I hate that. You're sitting there in the training room, but you just know your inbox is filling up with urgent emails.
It was worse than just emails. Some of these technicians had urgent files and, critical maintenance tasks just waiting on their desks.
Oh, wow.
So physically, they're in the safety game. But mentally, they're stressing about the backlog, the context, the reality of their workload was actively fighting the pedagogy.
That is such a classic corporate mistake. Here, learn this new skill, but also don't you dare drop any of the spinning plates you're already holding.
And that's why Alvarez puts context first. If the room is hostile or the schedule is impossible, the best game in the world is not going to save you.
Okay, let's move to E for Insignia, the teacher. Or in this case, the facilitators. We had the manager and the tech guy. A kind of buddy cop duo. How did they do?
It was actually one of the stronger parts of the session. They complemented each other really well. The manager knew the people. He knew who was shy, who was a joker, who needed a little nudge.
And the tech guy knew what to do when the software inevitably crashed.
Exactly. But there was a gap, wasn't there?
What was it?
A pretty dangerous one, actually. The manager was enthusiastic for sure, but he was just winging it. He didn't have a pedagogical booklet or anything. He didn't know how to teach with VR. He just knew he wanted to use it.
Like a substitute teacher who puts on a movie but then loses the remote.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, the tech expert knew the software inside and out, but he didn't know the factory. He didn't know the specific safety protocols of this specific chemical site.
Oof, that seems risky. If the expert points out a hazard in the game, but the employees are all like, actually, that's how we store things here because of Protocol X?
The expert loses all credibility.
Yeah, exactly.
The authority of the teacher is fragile. If the learners know more about the subject than the teacher, the whole game falls apart.
Let's talk about those people in the chairs. A for apprehended the learner. You said there were 30 of them. What stood out in the evaluation?
Couple of things. First, the physical reaction. One participant got really severe motion sickness in a toes.
The Achilles heel of VR.
It is. They handled it well, though. They let him play seated. But the social dynamic was much more interesting. There was this really clear generational divide.
Let me guess. The older workers hated it, and the younger workers loved it.
It's a bit more nuanced. The older workers, the veterans with 20 years on the floor, they were defensive. Their attitude was basically, I know safety, I've survived this long, why do I need a video game?
They felt patronized.
A bit, yeah. And the younger workers, their own colleagues pushed them to the front. Oh, send the kid up, he plays Fortnite.
Just stereotyping?
Yes, but also kind of dangerous. Just because you have good hand-eye coordination from playing Call of Duty doesn't mean you know anything about industrial chemical safety.
Good point.
It conflated gaming skill with professional competence.
So you have the veterans checking out because they think it's a toy, and the kids getting pushed into the spotlight because they're good at toys.
Which completely distorts the actual learning data. Are they finding the hazards because they know safety, or just because they know how to spot a weird-looking object in a game engine?
That brings us perfectly to the tool itself. J for you, the game. This is usually where companies stop evaluating. Did the game run? But CEPAJe asks, did the game actually work?
And this is where we find the most entertaining but also the most critical failures. Technically, the game was stable, but ergonomically, it was a mess.
How so?
The controllers, the button mapping was just not intuitive. Imagine you're in the simulation, you see a chemical spill, you point the controller, you press the trigger to take a photo, nothing happens.
Oh, no.
You press it again, still nothing. You're looking down at your hands.
You're fighting the interface. You're not looking for hazards.
Exactly. Your cognitive load is being wasted on button mashing. But the most specific failure was this one graphical glitch the researchers called the legless carist.
The legless carist. What, like a forklift driver?
Yes. In the background of the virtual warehouse, there was a forklift driver. But due to some rendering bug, he had no legs. It was just a floating torso driving a lift.
I mean, that's funny. But does it really ruin the training?
Well, think about immersion. The whole goal of a serious game is to suspend your disbelief, to make you feel like you are there in danger. The moment you see a floating ghost torso, your brain just goes, this is fake.
The magic circle breaks.
And once your brain decides this is fake, the risks don't feel real anymore. It's like, oh, that chemical spill, it's just pixels, who cares?
It turns a serious simulation back into a cartoon.
There were logic errors, too. The game asked players to identify open drawers as a risk. But in the game's code, some open drawers counted as points, and others didn't. For no reason.
It's incredibly confusing.
It's worse than confusing. It's negative learning. If I learned that some tripping hazards don't matter because the game didn't count them, I might carry that bad habit onto the real factory floor. The game is literally teaching me to be careless.
Wow. And that leads us to the final, and I think maybe the most important letter, P for pedagogy, the teaching strategy.
This is where the biggest clash happened. The game used a timer, a big countdown clock.
Now, hang on. Timers are standard in game design. They add tension. They make it exciting. Why does Alvarez flag this as a failure?
Because you have to look at the learning objective. What's the goal of a safety inspection in a chemical plant? Is it speed?
No, it's thoroughness. You want to catch everything.
Exactly. If you rush, people can die. But the game mechanics, the timer, forced the learners to sprint. They weren't analyzing the room. They were just scanning for points to beat the clock.
So they're gaming the system.
They were prioritizing speed over safety. The pedagogical tool, the timer, was actively sabotaging the learning objective, which was thoroughness. It conditioned them to do the exact wrong thing.
That is a profound insight. A feature that makes a game fun can actually make a training dangerous.
Precisely. And on top of that, the scenario wasn't customizable. The manager couldn't change the risks. So the workers were finding generic warehouse risks, like badly stacked boxes, instead of the specific complex chemical hazards they actually deal with every day.
They were practicing the wrong sport.
In a way, yes.
So let's just recap. The room gave them neck pain. Their inboxes were exploding. The older workers were grumpy. The younger workers were being stereotyped. The game had floating ghost drivers, and the timer taught them to rush through safety checks.
When you list it all out like that, it sounds like a complete catastrophe.
It does. Was the whole day just a waste of money?
You would think so. But this is why CEPAJe includes that third phase of time, the debriefing.
The chat after the game is done.
This one thing saved the entire session. Remember the fishbowl, the 29 people watched?
When it's not playing, yeah.
Because they weren't under the stress of the headset and the timer, they could actually analyze the scene properly. They started shouting out, help, look left, check that shelf. That's a violation.
Oh, so it became a team sport.
It sparked this massive peer-to-peer discussion. In the debrief, the manager didn't have to lecture them at all. The workers started debating amongst themselves, hey, in the game, that box was a risk. Do we do that in our warehouse?
Yeah, actually, Dave does that all the time.
Exactly. So the social interaction actually fixed the flaws in the software.
The teacher and the context managed to salvage the bad pedagogy.
Right. If you had just looked at the final test scores, you would have seen total failure. But because of the debrief, real learning actually happened.
That is the power of this framework. It allows you to see where the value actually came from.
Correct.
So, Immersive Factory and the plant manager, they get this report, they see all the red flags. What do? How do they fix it for the next time?
They perform what they called a reflexive analysis. Basically, they made a fix-it list.
Okay, hit me with the solutions.
First, a context fix. A simple administrative change. Managers must clear the schedules. If you are in training, you are out of office. Period. No urgent files.
Cost, $0. Impact, Huge.
Second, a tech fix. They realize you can't just throw people into a simulation without a tutorial. They suggested a sandbox mode, a safe space to just button mash and learn how to pick things up.
So you aren't fighting the controller during the actual test.
Right. Don't test my safety knowledge while I'm still figuring out which button is my thumb.
Makes sense.
Third, the big game in pedagogy fix. Kill the clock.
Just remove the timer.
Or flip it. Make it a count-up timer, just to track duration, not a countdown that induces panic. Prioritize accuracy over speed.
And was there a solution for that disconnect between the virtual game and the real factory floor?
Yes, and this one's my favorite. They suggested bridging the gap. You do the VR session, look for the glitchy virtual boxes, but then you immediately follow it with a real-life hazard hunt on the actual factory floor.
Oh, I love that. You found the hazard in the pixels, now go find the loose cable that's been under your own desk for 6 months.
It cements that transfer of knowledge. It proves that the game wasn't just a game.
This framework seems incredibly useful for diagnosing why something didn't work, but I seem to recall Alvarez ending the paper with a pretty ambitious thought on validation. He says even CEPAJe isn't the final step.
No. He argues that the only true validation isn't the game score, and it's not even the employee satisfaction survey.
So what is it?
It's reality. The ultimate metric is the accident rate of that chemical plant over the next 12 months.
The ROI isn't points on a screen, it's safety records.
Did people stop getting hurt? If the answer is yes, then the training worked. If the answer is no, then all the VR headsets in the world don't really matter.
That is a really sobering takeaway. We get so caught up in the cool factor of the tech or the design of the graphics.
We look through the keyhole. We obsess over the G of the game. But we completely ignore the context, the pedagogy, the learner. We need to open the door.
So, for you listening today, maybe you aren't running a chemical plant. Maybe you're just organizing a team meeting or teaching a class. What's the one thing to take from CEPAJe?
Stop blaming the learner. If someone isn't engaging, don't just assume they're lazy. Look at the context. Is the room too hot? Are they stressed about a deadline they have to meet? Look at the pedagogy. Are you asking them to memorize when they should be practicing?
It's never just one variable.
It's an ecosystem. And as a leader or a teacher, you are the architect of that ecosystem.
I'm going to be thinking about that U-shaped seating arrangement for a long, long time. Such a small detail, such a massive impact.
That always the detail.
A huge thank you to Julian Alvarez for this research and to the team at Immersive Factory for being willing to critique their own work so publicly. That kind of transparency is how the whole industry moves forward.
Absolutely.
And thank you to you for listening to this deep dive. Next time you're in a training session and things just feel off, take a look around. You might just see the CEPAJe grid lighting up all around you. Until next time, stay curious.